Well, hello everyone. How are you doing today? Turn that down. Well, welcome back. It's been a very long time since we've been on here. Yeah, I know it's just been real busy dealing with work, life. Yeah, I'll admit life's been a little bit of a shit show lately, but it doesn't matter. We're back on, and like always, when I have an episode, it's special, and this time it's special. Well, I'm gonna look into going with my whole thing of interviewing YouTube guys and going over some subject. And special episode, we're back into a movie theme again. We're going to talk about British crime. And even more special is we have a special guest on the episode, a guy who was part of the life of British crime, unfortunately, but he's reformed himself and he's got his own YouTube channel, Mr. Stephen Gillen. Make sure you check out Mr. Stephen Gillen's channel. Get a chance, you want to see him review movies, games, TV shows, showing you about movies about British crime. You can take a look at. He can tell you whether it's realistic or not. And a lot of what I might not really go too much into British crime movies. I might say some favorites I like because a lot of stuff movies we talk about on in my interview with Steven. But going to start off, I really have a lot of things kind of not really changed. People in Washington D.C. are still fucking idiots, especially Green and Hope Boebert. But Boebert might be out finally. At least somebody's there ahead voting wise. But unfortunately, Green got reelected, and that's why I say to people who vote in that area, if I ever called you stupid fucks, and I apologize, well, I take it back. You are stupid fucks. I want to say about that, stupid cyborg ape looking bitch. Anyways, get a little tribute near the end of the episode, but yeah, a lot of celebrity deaths from end of 2021 to now. I might name a few, but I know some were shocking though, like Ray Liotta for one. That was the one that was a really shock because that was like sudden, it was so sudden and everything, and then also Lisa Marie Presley, the daughter of the king of rock and roll himself. Pay tribute to all of them and say from everybody we all love every one of you. Unless you're, sack of shit, then no, we don't like you. But a lot of those were people we all loved. That was still a shock. Lisa Marie was a big shock. Yeah, there's also other shocks like James Caan, especially. That's another one. But yeah, a lot of them were just like so shocking. And going with our theme today, director Mike Hodges, who directed the classic Get Carter and a very underrated classic, A Prayer for the Dying. I mean, deals with an IRA guy, which will kind of play in with Stephen today, because Stephen is from Belfast. But yeah, I had no idea. I remember looking up his name, see, hey, was he even done anything lately? And well, he passed away. But yeah, he was like 91, 92. So I mean, something like that's bound to happen, unfortunately. But to pay tribute to him, from all the fans of British crime thrillers to the great director of the original Get Carter, Mr. Hodges, we salute you. And yes, and before people may ask, yes, I do like Stallone's Get Carter as well, because it's Stallone. You can't fault me on that one. But we do have some good news to talk about. I know I'm going to make a tribute to somebody at the end of the episode because he was a big part of my childhood. I'll name him later when we get to it. But we have some good news. You could say, welcome back to movies, Brendan Fraser and Ke Huy Quan. Well, who you might know as Data in Goonies and Short Round in Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom. Did amazing performances in their movies. Quan won the Golden Globe Unfortunately, Frazier didn't win, but I figured it would happen because he's ripped the Hollywood Foreign Press. They were gonna screw him for being himself anyway, so fuck them. Don't support a molester fucking president, jagoffs. And Butler won for playing Elvis, who he was amazing as, but we're happy to see Frazier back. Definitely happy to see Quan back, and you might see Quan later when he appears in Loki season 2. I would have said we would see Brendan Fraser doing the villain Firefly and Batgirl. Unfortunately, the dumb fuckhead of Warner Brothers, you heard me mention them a few times, canceled the film's a tax write-off. Oh, they said it was unreleasable, but yeah, bullshit. And here we all had hope because James Gunn was going to take over DC. He did very good with the Suicide Squad. I was very happy with it. And I'm thinking, oh my god, are we going to get Affleck's Batman back? And if you saw the end of Black Adam, we had Henry Cavill coming back. We were so excited, and he basically comes and takes a giant shit. Everybody's hopes. I mean, yeah, it's cool to see Batman Brave and the Bull, but we have to be stuck with Matt Reeves, the Batman. That's going to stay. So basically, everything the fans didn't want, he's fuck you to what the fans want, and hey, you're cool with me to what the fans don't want. And basically doing everything with the head of Warner Brothers. What, David Zaslav or Jagoff, whatever your name is. Well, fuck you, David. And fuck you, James. I'm going to say that too. You get rid of Henry Cavill, you keep Ezra Miller around. Yes, there's roles I like him in, but all the shit he's done, and you keep him around as Flash. Yeah, we did have the Flash trailer appear at the Super Bowl, and the only reason I would even consider watching it was to see Affleck as Batman one last time, especially since he's in a blue and gray outfit, like old classic Batman. But we'll get Michael Keaton, my Batman, and as Batman again, and he doesn't look that much different. And going with Batman, we'll soon be having the Batman episode because we're finally getting some recordings I've been basically hounding for. A little bit hounding. It wasn't. I didn't want to be aggressive about it, but hounding for. We'll be getting them soon. So Batman's happening soon. And when we do the Batman episode, we will make a tribute to another childhood Batman of mine, Kevin Conroy. Another shock end of last year. But going on, I did say I love British crime films. Big fan of Guy Ritchie and Matthew Vaughn and Mike Hodges. Guy Ritchie, of course, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, Snatch, Rock and Rolla. And of course, he did the Sherlock Holmes movies. He did do Aladdin, which was good. He did that King Arthur movie. Neither here or there. He did The Gentleman with Matthew McConaughey playing the American weed dealer in England, which was very good. It was longest common British gangster films. Charlie Hunnam was great in that, but mainly they did do a movie with Colin Farrell's character because he was excellent like always. And if you have HBO Max, catch Banshees of Inisherin. It's very odd, but it's a very good movie, and Colin Farrell's great as always in it, and it's a Martin McDonagh movie if you're a fan of him. But his character was great. There were the unique characters like a common Guy Ritchie movie, like you see back in Lock, Stock, and you see back in Snatch and Rock and Rolla. The very unique characters of that criminal underworld. Steven talks about it a lot. Matthew Vaughn, yeah, he did the Kingsman and he did X-Men First Class, and should have stayed on it with X-Men because with Bryan Singer back, you had to bring Simon Kinberg back. Ugh. But Matthew Vaughn did the classic movie Layer Cake, which basically helped Daniel Craig get cast as James Bond because he basically was James Bond, the drug dealer in it. And Mike Hodges, I talked about. He also did a movie with Clive Owen, I'll Sleep When I'm Dead, which I like the movie because it's Clive Owen, but it's not a classic like Get Carter is, or A Prayer for the Dying. I feel like Mickey Rourke is a very good movie by him, and he does a very convincing Irish accent. But there's also like a lot of other British crime stuff on that, I do like. I love watching old episodes of The Professionals, see all the criminal stuff they deal with on there. It's a good show to watch. But there's not so much I can go into because a lot of stuff we talk about, I'm going to go into it with Steven in a second. But overall, like I said, it's been a while since it's been on here. But also, I want to talk a little bit about mental health right now, because unfortunately, which I'll talk about later, we deal a lot with suicide, depression, and everything. And I just want to say, it's not wrong or it's ridiculous or gay or sad to ask for help. I had to, because there's times my mental health's been really bad, and if you listen to my episode, you could tell it in my voice. I'm not here. So yeah, if you're out there having problems, don't be afraid to ask for help. There's nothing wrong with it. I didn't ask for help for years, and it's gotten me later. But on the positive note, we said we're back in a special, and a special is our interview right here. Say hello to Mr. Stephen Gillen.
Jeremy,
Uh,
hi, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, very good. I can't complain. It's very busy this end, but that's what we do, and it's okay.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for doing this. And like I even said before, like I'm a big fan of your YouTube channel. And like I did this with Michael Francis
Yeah,
on
Michael.
gangster films. And one of the times I wanted to do an episode, I wanted to do it on British crime movies. And I figured, well, if I did this with Michael, why not get somebody else who was part of that life as well? And when I seen you had a YouTube channel, I thought, why not?
Look, it's good. It's clever thinking, and thank you for thinking of me, Jeremy. Another thing that's going to be good for you for the traffic and the keywords and all that stuff is, I'm just releasing a new brand next week, the Resilience Code. I'm going to be doing a lot of interviews, and there's going to be a lot of push, a lot of marketing about this. So the keywords, the name, everything's going to come up again. So that's good. That's
Okay.
good, my friend. Right?
Yeah.
Thank you for for thinking of me. I mean, me and Michael are friends, and I mean, you would have seen yourself. Really, there's a lot of guys out there that do a lot of things. Good luck to them, really. But we kind of stand alone in the way of what we do and where we are. Like, to be honest, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right? And that's good. And we're gonna be doing a lot more work together, me and Michael as well. So it's all good, for the people we're working.
Yeah, I was gonna ask from like the movies they do about well the life you're part of. Like, you have any main favorites, or you just like a lot of them, or?
When it comes to British films, there's a certain genre because organised crime and the way it migrates, although it's really the same here in its roots and where it comes from. It comes from poverty, it comes from the inner cities, it comes from trauma, it comes from all these drivers. It's a bit different in the States, it depends where you're sitting on the hill. But the results of it, and everything else, of course, the violence involved in it, the money involved in it, it's exactly the same, the racketeering element. Guy Ritchie does a really good description of portraying it and translating it to audiences, but he has a certain kind of formula of filmmaking. He's Guy Ritchie, right?
Yeah.
But what you see across the board with a lot of British crime films that which I see that are really authentic, that are really close to what the life is like, is they're very close to people in that life. So the research is really spot on, and in many cases they use and collaborate with a lot of people in that life or who were in that life to get the nuances of how this translates to audiences really well, really spot on.
Yeah. Have you ever been consulted for movies before, or no?
I have a few times.
Oh.
Yeah, a few times. I mean, well, I was the branding of Gangs of London, which was a massive series here in Sky. I was also, there was many things out in the papers about, I was one of the inspirations for one of the main characters in the Gangs of London, right? And I can see why it's, they were saying Finn, who was the head guy, and, it's got all the Irish background to it and all that stuff. I get that. ITV, Channel 4, a few guys have come to me about series, on
Hmm.
TV. Some of them are out there now. Yeah, to find out about not just organised crime, but prison, what prison was really like, and
Oh, okay.
how to write them scripts and reenact some of them scenes.
I have it saved. I have to watch it. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have Sky, but I do want to watch it. I've heard all about it. It looks really good. But what's the character that's based on you again? His name is which one?
Finn, he
Finn.
gets killed at the start, but he was the father who kind of starts it off, and this is in season one. Of course, I was part of work with Sky and all that on season two, but there's a season three coming.
Oh, cool. Well, I'll have time to catch up at least. So. Has there ever been like any movies based on your life that you probably looked at like this is a joke? That wasn't comedy, of course.
I think most producers and most scripts, most British gangster films that you would know, they need to be of a certain quality or have elements close to the life, to even get the funding and get that far along where they get made, Jeremy, to be honest. Where I see, the lower quality films, obviously they're going to be lower quality, the lower kind of budget stuff. But what I see is when I see some of these far-fetched films like, the Joker and all these kind of films where they have these, I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, it really doesn't happen like that. And some of the other films, like with the big robberies, although it's very entertaining, and there are people of that level who do them bits of work. Really, the way that translates, it's not real life. I'm talking about things like Ocean's 11 and this kind of
Yeah.
stuff. It's just a bit far fetched, and it doesn't happen like that. Not to say that there are really sophisticated teams who come together, do really sophisticated bits of work like that. But
Okay.
this is a different level of for the audiences, right?
Saying it's kind of you've been part of a few jobs, or is that like kind of a need to know?
Look, I've been part of a lot of stuff. I mean, it's out there, and the truth is, I was an armed robber for a lot of years. At many different levels of armed robbery. When you're an armed robber in that life, and that's what you do, which is the heavy stuff, the violent stuff, the street stuff, the pavement stuff, as we used to call it. We used to, fall on anything that moved, really, within reason, if it worked for us. And it was, you don't want to make it hard for yourself. And one thing is, you don't want to get caught, or worse, or
Yeah.
go to prison.
Yeah.
So it's all these things you think about. But it's well publicized. I was involved in all that stuff. A lot of it very, very serious. A lot of high level stuff. I went to prison. I had 3 trials at the Old Bailey for armed robbery. Beat the first one. The second one I beat. I got guilty on the firearm, possession of the firearm. But the third one, which was a ready eye, which is like an ambush. Police was there. Shots was fired. Me and the people with me, we got arrested there for that one. I got 17 years for that. I went to prison as a Category A prisoner, high security, which would be your penitentiary over there.
Yeah.
And I served 12 years of that as a high security prisoner and released still as a high security prisoner.
Was that a prison? Was that called Broadmoor or something like that, or?
Broadmoor is criminally insane. It's more, but no, these are your high security prisons and units that I was in. We call them dispersals over here.
Oh, okay.
You would call them penitentiaries. Supermax and supermax. You call them
Yeah,
supermax
Supermaxes.
over there
Oh.
too, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, we have Supermaxes. Yeah, real crazy ones. Okay, so I get that. What did I say? I know you did say a Guy Ritchie. I mean, pretty sure you've probably seen some of Mike Hodges' works too.
Yeah, he's good. He's good. I mean, look, there's a lot of talented filmmakers out there. If we're talking about people like actors who portray the life, that British gangster, mobster life on screen really well, you're talking about Ray Winston.
Yeah.
Who I know. I know Ray Winston,
Oh.
and I know Ray knew a lot of people in the life who I knew. Some of them are passed now, right? But so Ray knows this life and he is so good at translating it on the screen. And I mean, we can go right the way back to when he done Scum, when
Yeah,
he
I've
was
seen.
young. First really started his career there. That lifted Ray. That was about the Borstal, right? But even from there, all the way through, then you got other guys. Jamie Foreman, of course, his father is Freddie Foreman, who's a big name. I mean, I talked to Freddie a little while ago, all right? He's 90 now, Freddie, right? But his son, Jamie, you're talking about films like Gangster Number One, this kind of films, right? Translated it really well. Another film, another actor that I thought really showed the life, especially in that time that I knew in Marbella in the 80s and kind of the cocaine scene and the way organized crime was really driving then, is The Business, Tamer Hussein. You have to watch that film. It showed a good depiction of what that life was there then, with a lot of British criminals, the old school ones who was migrating to Spain and Marbella, Costa del Sol, and back and forth and all that kind of stuff.
Did you like the movie Tom Hardy did where he played the Craze?
I knew Reggie from prison.
Oh.
I knew Reggie in older days. I knew Charlie out, but I knew Charlie from prison really well as well. And I thought he played as good a depiction as he could of them back in the day because he's such a masterful actor. But it was
Yeah.
still a bit off, right?
Yeah. I think it was a long time ago when I first started getting Netflix and they had it on there. I think they did another movie about the Craze back in like 1990s or something or early 90s, something like that. I think it was 2 twins that played him in that one too.
Look, there's something I'll tell you about the Craze, right? Now some of them real old school, right? Some real old who was a band in them days. There's one guy I know, I was talking to him the other day. He's an unbelievable guy. He goes right the way back. He was the driver for Billy Hill, who was the main gangster in London before the Craze. The Craze was his proteges and the way they come after. And then you had the Richardsons. But let me tell you, and I knew Eddie Richardson very well. I was in prison with Eddie too. These guys are older than me, but I know them very well. And they know me. But I can tell you one thing. The Richardsons earned more money than the Craze. They was businessmen. But Billy Hill, before them, he was the real gangster. He earned more money than both of them put together. I'm telling you. And another thing I'll tell you as well about the Craze is they actually earned more money in prison with their brand and their books and all that than they ever did on the street when they was doing the mobster stuff. And that's the truth.
Oh, wow. Because I know I've heard stories about the Richardsons. I know now you say you met Eddie, but that was actually true, that whole, they were like, what, the torture gang and all that stuff?
Yeah, they was arrested for that. They was found guilty for that. They went to prison for that. Frankie Fraser, all them guys, right?
Yeah.
There was that animosity between them and South London. They didn't get on for whatever reason. I had many talks with Eddie, as well, right? And in Parkhurst when we was in Parkhurst, and when this would come up about the craze, or I was young, I'm much younger than Eddie. I used to play him badminton in there all the time as well. He was a great painter, oil painter, but he'd laugh and we'd have some laughs because I grew up in Bethnal Green, so that was a bit of a joke between us. Oh, east against south, but in a jokey way. So we'd make light of that, right? Because this is years later.
So the whole Richardson and Crace thing was like a north and south type deal.
Pretty much, but it was a bit deeper than that because their business is across path, and of course Cornell, who was from East London, was with them, and Ronnie Craig killed him, of course. They crossed swords on a few occasions. There was bad blood there in them days between them guys.
Oh, Cornell, that's the guy he walked in the pub and just shot him in front of everybody?
The blind beggar, yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah. But because it was Ronnie Cray, nobody was going to say nothing at first because it's him.
I mean, the story about Ronnie, he done that blatantly in the blind beggar, and I'll tell you something, the blind beggar is not far from where I grew up, right? And if you go in the blind beggar now still, they've still got the bullet holes in the wall. They'll show you, there's a photo in there. They'll show you the stool, and where it happened, all this kind of stuff, right?
Okay. I know I did say movies, but I mean, I know you did say like these filmmakers want to do really good with portraying a life, but has there been an actor even doing a decent job you still would look at him like, nah, he wouldn't really work in the life?
Some,
Yeah.
I mean, there are, but you get surprised as well, right? You get
Okay.
surprised. This it's more about the quality of the actor
Yeah.
than the role that they have. And I'll give you an instance. If you look at Ben Kingsley,
Yeah.
in Sexy Beast.
Yeah.
Now, Ben Kingsley, he never plays the parts. That's
Yeah.
not a part that he really plays. He plays the opposite, really, of them parts. But in that, he played it to a T. I mean, I actually know, guys. There was a couple of people who come to mind watching that film, who I know, who I grew up with, who I was around in them days. It was very much like that character he plays in there. Really, give or take, He just, he pulled it off. It was a great performance. So that shows you. But then there's others here and there where maybe the script's not right for them, or the cinematography is not right, the way the dynamic of the director is pushing the narrative, or maybe they're not right. Maybe they're not in their best day, or they just can't get into character, and it's off.
Okay. It was funny. I used to watch when it was on the show Deadwood, and I didn't know Ian McShane was British till I heard him on an interview, and I was like, that's weird. But then, even with the accent, he still sounded intimidating. So, like that scene in Sexy Beast when he's having the dinner, where he says, what happened? Oh, I told you. Well, no, tell me again. It's like, uh-oh.
Yeah, I mean that there. You see, it's sometimes in these films, and this is why I'm saying where what you find is in the quality of the budget, because then you're getting quality of the writers and the script, quality of the director, and also the quality of the actors that attach to that script. Because then you're not just getting a content-driven film, you're getting a performance-driven film, and this is the art, part of the elements and the art of making a film. Because then you're just and that's why the director's there, and you've got the consultants, and you really cast well, and you get the right script and dialogue to get that moment, to position for that moment, to get that actor, and you've got it in your head, you already see it, and you know what you're looking for. And if he has to do it a few times or whatever until you get what you're looking for, that's the job of a director producer, right?
Yeah. What do you think of when I know of course, his famous role being in that portraying somebody that life would be Get Carter, but how do you think Michael Caine did in those roles?
Michael Caine is a masterful actor.
Oh yeah, of
And he's a
course.
masterful actor. I mean, he's a timeless classical actor in the sense that he's unbelievably versatile. But when you see, he's an actor, like if you look at The Italian Job, that's
Yeah.
so famous. But he can pull that off because he's the kind of guy who doesn't need to try too hard. And in the not trying too hard, it becomes really, really authentic. I think some people blow it when they try too hard because there are all sorts of characters in this life, right?
Hmm.
And it depends where you're sitting on the hill, right? But I mean, another one that has to be said is an all-time classic that really portrayed the life a little bit further back, but it was very close. The Long Good Friday, Bob Hoskins.
Yes. Oh yeah, I love that one. I mean, I love Bob Hoskins, but I love him in that.
That was so close, Jeremy. I mean, when I was growing up and how we we was with them kind of older lot, and the way we was grown into that life, groomed into that life, and the figures that I hung around, and Bob Hoskins, how he played that character there, they was just like that. There was all of that and more. There's very vibrant, very very clever, very showy in a way, but not too much in a flash way. But they also had that dash of dark humor and that mercurial kind of attitude that could switch
Yeah.
in a minute like that. I mean, he really pulled that off. That was, you would say that was, that was modeled on Freddie Foreman, that they would have said. I mean, I know people said that, and I could see why they would have said that. A younger Freddie Foreman, but in that life at that time, that's a very good description of how a lot of the chaps, as we used to call it, were.
My first seen it was I went to a school mainly for film. I ended up to graduate with screenwriting degree, and I did watch that as part of an acting class. My teacher was an Irish guy. He's like, watch that on performance, like just at him in that last scene. He doesn't say anything. It's just look at all his facial expression. It's like he's scared, then he looks for a way out of this, then he smiles knowing, hey, I knew this was gonna happen, but okay. Like he accepts it, then he's kind of laughs at it.
You're so right, Jeremy. In that moment, and I said that to me, one of the most iconic, timeless British gangster classic films, and that moment that encapsulates so much, and it's hard to beat, I have to say, is that scene there when he gets in the back of the car outside the Savoy. Of
Yeah,
course, they got him right,
yeah.
and in that moment you see his car because he doesn't say anything, but it speaks volume. Great,
Yeah,
fantastic.
I know. I just like that, the music and everything, and but just like how, especially when they show up, how he kind of smirked. I knew it was gonna happen.
Yeah, and it's like a kind of, well, fuck you too, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
there's all of that stuff, right? There's all
Yeah.
of that stuff. It's hard to beat that one from Bob Hoskins, I have to say. It's a timeless piece of cinematography right there.
Oh, of course, yeah. Well, I know, and I did like. We think he's gotten out of it because he took out the IRA boss and the other guy in that racetrack. But I remember the guy he killed beforehand says, "No, these guys are like ants. You step one, more's coming." Right as you know at the end, you're like, "Yeah, you knew that was gonna happen."
It's very true, and it was a big film of its day because when that film came out, was there was still a lot of trouble. Where I grew up. I grew up in Belfast. No one knows it any more than me, right? Really, how that worked, right? So there was still a lot of that stuff going on at that time. So it was a hit film. It was very current, of its day.
Yeah. Like, was it pretty rough growing up in Belfast?
It was rough growing up there, and yeah, but you had good people there. It's still my history. I think fondly of it. I see terrible things there, and know that a child, my age shouldn't see, but it was a war zone, and I certainly carried that stuff, and it certainly shaped me for some of the stuff that was to come later. But so I look back at that as with a mixture of fondness because it's my history, and I was a child, but with hindsight and knowing that what a terrible time that was for so many.
I like bring up a lot of movies, but and a funny thing is using my channel name. I asked in a comment on YouTube once, have you ever any interaction with the game The Getaway?
Not as such. With the games, I know bits about the games, Jeremy, but my team, they kind of got me into these games now. I thought it was cool. I said, yeah, absolutely. Let's do it, right? We'll see how authentic it is. And, I'm sure it'll be good content. We'll have a laugh doing it. We'll get it out to the audiences. We'll see what they think. So a few of them, not as such. Not as such.
Okay, yeah, because that was a game back in, well, it was years ago. It was PlayStation 2. Shows I'm pretty,
Yeah.
it looks I'm pretty old too. If I say PlayStation 2, but it had a lot of that what you'd see from those type of British films, and Bethnal Green comes up a lot because the main bad guy is the Bethnal Green, group.
Typical, huh? Do you know what I mean? But look, but look, I have to say, I mean, they're just so good now. They're just so lifelike. There's just so much programming. There's so much art involved in them. They do amazing stuff. I have to be honest. You see me back in the day where it was Atari with two things on the screen and one thing that went back and forth. That's being honest with you. So we've come so far. I look at these things and I say, wow, that's amazing. It really is. The migration of it, where it is now, and it becomes so so much more lifelike. Done a game there as you see before, I'm
Yeah.
going to do a few more. It brings up a lot of stuff. So, I'm really interested in what people think about this stuff, nowadays.
You do get a chance to look up like clips of it, you should check it out. Right. You probably look at like, oh, okay. Half the game is the main guy who is a former guy of the life, but he's got to be enforced back into it by the old boss. And then the other half of the game is a guy of the flying squad.
Oh, the flying squad. Yeah, well, look, I'll have a look. I'm interested now, Jamie. You've piqued my interest, right?
Uh,
And I'm gonna have a look.
well, that's why I said flying squad. Like, yeah, I wonder you probably dealt with them before.
I certainly did. These was look. The flying squad back in the day in London. I mean, I was arrested by the flying squad, but there was a real cat and mouse. They was kind of like the FBI over there. What they was a specialist squad to deal with the gangster, right? And it was mainly armed robbery, of course, but the heavy stuff, guns and all this stuff. Thing in the time then, and yeah, I had a lot of dealings with them where they would be on us, off us, surveillance for years. I had that with them. I mean, it's different now. They have different squads, the NCA and NCS and all this different kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, National Crime Squad and different kind of groups they have now for organised crime. But back in the day in London, it was the Flying Squad.
Oh, okay, cool. Because of course he had that great part as the right hand guy in Lock, Stock. Did you ever get to meet Lenny McLean?
I did, yeah, yeah. I knew Lenny, yeah. I met him a few times. He had a couple of fallings out with some friends of mine who was close to me. Just the way it was in them days. And then there was another one who was older than us, and he was really coming up then, quite violent in them days. The way that we was, has to be said. And I was also in prison with Lenny too, but I never had no problems with Lenny. I mean, he used to always, Camden Palais and all them clubs. He'd be on the door. He'd get me up the front if he see me, or be out with a girl, or sometimes I'd go out with the guys, and he'd get us in. He'd say, no trouble, Steve, behave, right? Do you know what I mean? And that, and
Yeah.
but we used to behave, right?
Yeah,
And,
yeah, I see a documentary somebody did about him. All he said was that there's be times all he would say was just tell them I'm manning the door, and he wouldn't even have to show up. People would just think he's there and not do nothing.
he was quite a guy, Lenny. An Adam, really.
Yeah,
That's to be said. He was a one-off. When it comes to that kind of stuff, he was quite a person. He was, he was a one-off. Not someone you'd want to get on the bad side of, but you had no needs, to get on the bad side of him. Some people did.
yeah.
They wouldn't stand no nonsense. Lenny, he was very like that, right? That kind of character. But I always got on, and I would like for me, of course, I was very crazy too, but I'll be very diplomatic with the right people. I wanted good friends, not making the wrong enemies. So I was wise enough to be like that.
It kind of goes along with a story Michael told, which is very funny. But did you ever have anybody that tried to get a comp by saying that you're his friend, even though you never knew the guy? Or
Yeah, certainly. More than a few times. But look, this happens. This happens, in the life. Look, it can cause a lot of problems, that, by the way,
oh
right?
yeah,
But there's one thing I will say about that. Certainly for how we was and the way that we was and how deep in it we was and how active we was and the people we knew and how we was. It's very easy to check that stuff out because we was very paranoid and we had to be, the life that we was living, it was extremely serious. So we wasn't good about letting people in anyway. So you wouldn't be able to get close to us like that, easy like that. But anything like that, really, it'd be easy to check. Someone always knows someone who knows someone, and who is this guy? Who's his family? What's the thing about this guy? What's the history? Do you know what I'm saying?
yeah, oh yeah, definitely. His story was funny because the guy had the mistake of talking to him personally and say, "Oh, this guy could vouch for me," and it's like you're talking to the guy, like, "Oh, really? You do, huh?" Like,
Yeah, I've had that. I've actually had that. Like I said, that can cause a lot of problems. But
uh,
look, and I have to say, let me just say as well, and this is important. But with hindsight and of all the stuff I had to go through in that life and what it cost me, and what it cost a lot of people that was dear, many are not here now. They died extremely young and all that. Looking back now with the wisdom, and I'm one of the ones who saw through it. I mean, at the end of the day, I always played by the rules of that life. I went to prison as a cat A. I served a very hard time, and I was released the same way. I never give them nothing. They never give me nothing. I didn't, but I come out and I wasn't beholden to no one because I'd always play by the rules of that life. but I saw through that lie, right? I was very lucky in that respect that I left with my self-respect, if you want to call it that, but I made a clean break in that way because I wasn't beholden to anyone, right? And I'd certainly give so much more than what I was ever given or anything like that, right? So, but looking back, it's a bad life. It's always going to end bad for you in that life, It may look glamorous and stuff like that. Don't forget, they only show you, the really good bits on the telly, right?
Yeah.
Wine, women, and song. But it's really crazy because what you get with people is, oh, that's a great fun, this is that. And yeah, but, did you watch what happened to these guys? Or did you see what part of the film was you watching that was where you didn't see where they lost everything, right?
Yeah.
And their family, the people they cared about got murdered or they went insane or they had to, all of this, they lost everything. Because really, especially nowadays, it has to be said, it's very hard with the technology and everything else, the way that it is, to live a life like that now. Before it was even hard then in a way, but it was much different. Now is a very different thing, right?
Actually, that's all the questions I really actually wanted to really ask you. That's it. But what you said there at the end actually was a very good topper for the episode, or your part of the episode. But just want to say again, thank you for being on here, and I will look forward to seeing more of your work on YouTube and the what is it called? Resilience, you said? Your
The resilience code. Now, look, the
resilience code?
resilience code is a really, I'll say a bit on this because it's worth saying. This is all my knowledge condensed. You're talking about, overcome the trauma, the addiction, the recidivism, the abandonment, the isolation, criminal, the whole bit. But this is really, it's very targeted towards males. So this is very tough for us, the male of the species. And there's going to be a lot of stuff coming out about that. And it's really engineered and geared to help people. So you don't need no big money and all this stuff. You got ways to come in to engage, have access to me, Q&A, really, get them learnings. We're going to do a lot of good with this. It's going to be very, very big, I'm telling you. We got the whole team behind it. We've put a lot of money into it too, because this is the best way forward for us now to do the best that we can, to help as many people as we can and give as much value as we can, right? So I'm really excited about that, and look out for that, guys. And yeah, thank you for having me on. Well done with all your great work. You're a really nice guy. It's been my privilege to come on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I will look forward to hearing, and hopefully maybe sometime in the future get to talk to you again.
Well, absolutely.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a good one, Stephen. Well, thank you again, Steven. That was a great interview. Like I said, we covered a lot. That's why I didn't go into a full deep dive into British crime, cinema, or real life, because we gave a good deep dive right there. I wonder if he was around when Danny Dyer did his Deadliest Men episode, because, he could have been on there, because he seemed like he was a legit guy. If you see him in a movie, you could tell he's legit. When you see Lenny McLean in Lock, Stock, you tell he's a legit dude. He's not some fake actor thing. He's a legit guy. But like I also said, look into his page again. Also look into his new project, Resilience Strong, because like he says, they're here to help. They're here to talk. They have Q&As, stuff like that. And he's not trying to rip you off like some of these other people that, oh, we're here for this, but we're gonna charge you $1,000. He's there to help you out and do the right thing. Like I said, he's turned his life around. Like when we did our interview with Michael Francis a couple years ago on the gangster film episode, we talked with him. Same deal. He's not in that life anymore. He's trying to do good by it, but he's also trying to give us some fun content. Hopefully, he looks into the getaway and gives us an episode on that. But thank you again, Steven. It was great to have you on here. And like I said at the beginning of the episode, we're having the Batman episode coming up. We'll have our usual returning people. We'll have Josh and Marco, and Amber will be back on. Might be a few weeks or so to get everybody, but it's happening. And I keep saying it before, it's happening, but finally it looks like it's happening. And like I did mention about Kevin Conroy, we'll be making a tribute to him on the episode. And also, if you want some really cool, fun martial arts content, look at my friend Viking Samurai. His title's in the description right above you right now. He's got some cool interviews coming up. I think he's about to do a live stream with Lorenzo Lamas. Anybody who's, underrated old school martial arts TV, give a good check of that. But check a lot of his interviews lately. He's had a lot of big people on there, like Mark Dacascos, Scott Adkins. He's had Sheldon Lettich, who's done a lot of the classic Van Damme movies, action films. Of course, his interview with Stephen Lambert. I hope to get Stephen back on soon. And I know, and I do mean it, I do hope to get Stephen Gillen back on as well. But I'm hoping to get more guests, but trying to get back into the way of things and definitely be, back on trying to do more episodes again. Like I did mention starting my new martial arts Aikido, I'm actually about 2 belts away from the black belt. I would have been 1 belt away, unfortunately, because of life and that. I fell off a bit, and I, need to get back in the groove of things for when next testing happens. So I'll be able to test and do it right, not just feel it handed to me, which he doesn't do. But I like to feel good about when I test for it and not feel like it was handed to me and it's useless. But moving along, I did mention where I'm making a tribute at the end of this episode. Near the end of the year, I get Kevin Conroy, big part of my childhood. He was one of my Batman, along with Michael Keaton. Eventually, Christian Bale and Affleck were too. Val Kilmer did a decent job, and when he passes away, I'll make tribute to him too. But another big part of my childhood was I used to watch the Power Rangers all the time. And unfortunately, a big part of my childhood was the character of Tommy, Jason David Frank, who was the Green Ranger. And then he was the White Ranger and many Rangers after that. But I always loved the Green Ranger because my favorite color is green. Fortunately, kind of like a week after Kevin Conroy, unfortunately committed suicide. I don't know the specifics of why. Maybe, like I said, depressions is a silent killer. People are afraid to say they're depressed. They're afraid to tell they're sad. They're afraid to seek help, which is why I say right now, get help. Because unfortunately, it happens. I lost Chester Bennington, a big part of my life, because he spoke the words I needed to say. And now him, he was a big part of my childhood. I used to always watch as a kid. There's a time when I grew my hair out, I wanted to wrap it in a ponytail like Tommy did. And then I had to cut it to look like the other ass fucks in that stupid school. But it just kills me. It still shocks me right now. Didn't get to take a picture with him, unfortunately, but I seen him at cons. Got to see him take a picture of the crowd. He looked like the happiest guy in the world. That's why it shocks you, but then you realize people are suffering from this mental illness. You don't know. We hide behind a mask. I suffer from it too, and I put a smiling face on to please others, and it's wrong. This is totally wrong. I mean, I know this is a worse example, but there's a scene in The Joker of 2019 where Joaquin Phoenix writes in a journal, the worst thing about having mental illness is that people expect you to act as if you don't. And I don't think that's right. It's ridiculous you have to hide it, because when you hide it, it hurts more. Trust me, I know. So, yeah, I just want to say right away that Jason David Frank, or like my favorite name to call you, hey Tommy, sound the dragons, or head in the battle. But I love you, and so do all the fans. Well, all right, let's not end on a sad note. Like I said, we had a good episode. I know you expected a deep dive, but hey, the interview was a deep dive. I mean, come on, we covered a lot, which is us talking. But like I said, welcome back, and for all the new subscribers, welcome. And I'll try to get more content out soon. I'm sorry if you subscribed and you just waited a year for me to post something. It's just been a rough year, but I'm hoping to get back into it more and more. Like I said, we'll have the Batman episode soon. I'm not gonna say when, but soon. But from everybody here at Welcome to the Movies podcast, have a good day. We'll see you next time. Like I say, see you next week, because it's end up being 2 or 3 weeks. So I'll see you next time. Hopefully it's the Batman, but hey, if we get a special episode in the meantime, well, special episode in the meantime. And very final departing words from a hero for all of us that we all had and we all need still today.
I guess it's time to say goodbye again. May the power protect you all.
And those are some good parting words. Well, like I said, we'll miss you, Tommy. And I'll say I missed being on talking to all of you. So I'll see you next time when we do whatever episode comes. Like to be surprised and keep us on our toes. We might have some interviews, we might not. But until then, in the meantime, in between time, enjoy the show. I'll see you later. And like I said always to the, geniuses in Washington and the idiots that give us hell every day, thank you, fuck you, bye.
Well, it's time for us to leave. We'll always be with you.